Ryan, what a huge honor. Hello.
Hey, Owen. Thanks for having me. Big fan.
Big right back at you, right back at you.
Thank you.
In these quiet, serene times in which we live.
Yeah.
So little to discuss.
Yeah. You think we
I,
can figure something out to talk about, right?
I know. I mean, where would we begin? What I'm going to talk
Yeah.
about, I'm really fascinated by you because so you're this political YouTuber in the United States with like over 1 million subscribers to your YouTube channel. And obviously, I have huge envy. But as well as that, YouTube is dominated so much by the right. Like it's
Right.
become like their main battleground, and
Yeah.
people like Ben Shapiro and all the rest, and they've got these, huge platforms on YouTube. I'm just interested, firstly, why do you think it is? Why have progressives? I mean, you're leading and we'll talk about your channel and how people can fight back on YouTube. But why do you think that is?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that when you have the mainstream media, people are under this mistaken notion that, like, okay, we have NBC and CBS and ABC and New York Times and the Washington Post, and that's the liberal media. And so we don't need any other battlegrounds because we already have them. But in reality, obviously, mainstream media sources aren't these liberal bastions. They're not out there to defend Democrats the same way that conservative media is out there defending Republicans. So, I think we've ceded this ground for so long because we've just kind of rested on our laurels and expected these mainstream media sources to, go to bat for Democrats. In reality, they actually fall over themselves to prove that they're not the liberal media. That's why during the last election cycle, I can't even count the number of times that we heard all of these mainstream media sources repeat bad faith claims from the right, like how, about Hillary's emails and all the Benghazi stuff. And I mean, it's just, the list goes on and on. But the through line here is that, we've just expected these liberal mainstream media sources to do all the work, when in reality, that's not what they're there for. And that's not what they're going to do. So, I think there's this major disparity in the media where kind of, the right wing has realized that the place where people are right now is online. And that goes from election cycles as well. People still think, that running these campaigns in Congress, that the place to reach people is on TV and in mailers, when in reality, everyone is on the internet, everyone is on Facebook, everyone's on YouTube. And the faster we realize that, the faster we'll be able to level that playing field, so to speak.
So when you set up your YouTube channel, what were you aiming to do? Why do you think it was important politically or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, especially with today's Republican Party, there is so much bad faith happening, and that's as late as today. We see it on a daily, and hourly, a minute by minute basis, that all of these bad faith attacks are happening, and we kind of just accept it as reality, accept that that's like how it's going to be in politics, that they can just kind of spout off these bullshit claims, and well, it's politics, so that's how it's going to be, when in reality, like, no. Somebody needs to kind of push back against these daily claims. And so that's what I do with my videos. I find specific instances that happen throughout the day. They might be the major breaking news piece of that day, or one or two or three, whatever it is, and just kind of break it down sentence by sentence if I need to, and kind of tell people the truth. And I think that's another big part of it too, right? Like, people don't know what reality is anymore. And that's a problem that conservative media has brought forward. It's that there's not really any adherence to facts or reality. And so when you have people that watch these news sources, you can't really blame them, but you only know what you've been told. You only know what you know. So if they're getting misinformation and then they repeat it, well, that's the information they were fed. And so, my channel and my goal and what I do is kind of just to push back against that.
I mean, do you think this is why the right have an advantage in a sense? Because I mean,
Yeah.
there's this political linguist in America called George Lakoff, who wrote this brilliant book on political communication called was it "Don't Think of an Elephant, You're Thinking of an Elephant." That's the point. And the point, one of the points he makes is that the right are very good at telling stories which rely on emotions, whilst
Right.
the left, people on the progressive end of politics, often think they can win arguments just by facts. But humans aren't. We're not machines. We're not computers.
Totally.
We are very emotional creatures. So when the right use often misinformation, but it's very emotional. It you know, it plays at the harp of the human soul or whatever. And then people on the, you know, the progressive end just come back with, well, actually, factually, that's not right. That's not right.
Yeah.
Do you think it doesn't work? I mean, does the left, do progressives need to be a bit dirtier? I mean, there's one way someone put it of sometimes the left turn up to a knife fight with a calculator. I don't know. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, I mean, uh, that's a good question, and you know, I've interviewed people before that have kind of said that the left needs to be better at. So what the right has realized is that if you have villains, it's easier to pin the blame on somebody. That's why you have these boogeymen on the right in the United States. That's why the right is so focused on Hillary Clinton, on immigrants, on whoever they can find to villainize. They need to be able to throw the dart at someone, and it needs to land on somebody so that they can rip them to shreds on a nightly basis on Fox News and OAN and Newsmax and what other conservative media networks there are. But I think what the left needs to be better at doing is finding their villains and work on focusing on those people. So, for example, we want to a popular position in this country is to raise the taxes on the wealthy. Well, the left is too afraid to actually call out the wealthy. And I think when we can do that, when we can find our villains, and you can do it in a righteous way, in a virtuous way. And I think when we can find those people and not be afraid to call them out, not be afraid of our own shadows, not be afraid of ruffling feathers, and that goes the same for fossil fuel companies and special interest and whoever it is. But I think the Democrats for a long time have been kind of afraid of their own shadows. And I think once we get over that, once we can recognize that there are villains in society and that we do need to focus on those people to make, the rest of Americans' lives better, then we'll be better off for it.
I mean, do you think that's in a way what your kind of project partly does? Because, one of the disadvantages for the left doing that, which is, I totally agree with you, really important, is what the right do is they'll say, be angry at the immigrant. They're responsible for all the problems in your life. Right. Or they'll say, I don't know, in your country, I think, you call them, you don't, but they're described as welfare queens, a very racialized term. Here they call them benefit scroungers. So you basically be angry at your neighbor down the road, maybe someone down the road, they're the people who are to blame. And it's less abstract because when we talk about tax avoiders or when we talk about the financial sector, for example, they don't live in people's neighborhoods. So when we say you should be angry with these people, it seems more abstract. So do you think one of the things this kind of, a progressive online project to do is actually makes them real? These are the targets you should be angry about, even if you can't see these scapegoats or think you see them in your community.
Yeah, I mean, the craziest thing is, we had the $1.5 trillion tax cut for the ultra wealthy and corporations, and to think that the enemies here are immigrants or migrants making a few bucks an hour, while the vast majority of our tax dollars is going to corporate welfare. Basically, we have $20 billion that go to fossil fuel companies every year. I mean, the fact that the right has been able to convince so many people that immigrants or migrants making a few dollars an hour are the issue, when trillions of our tax dollars are going to the ultra wealthy, the people in the top 1%, is both impressive and really sad, a really sad state of affairs in this country. So yeah, I mean, I think that, we do have to be able to call out the people who are actually accepting this money, who are actually writing these laws, who are actually creating, benefiting from these loopholes. And I think, like you said, I mean, I'm in total agreement. I think that once you're able to actually call these companies out and show who are the actual villains in this country, I think we'll be better off for it.
In the age of Biden now, so the Democrats are back in the White House. We don't know what's going to, in the Senate, the runoffs in Georgia. But in terms of what's the role now of a progressive YouTuber? Because I suppose the danger is now that some might end up simply being Praetorian Guards or whatever. Democrats.
Cheerleaders, right.
Cheerleaders, rather than giving them a kick up the backside, rather than say, so what, because obviously what will happen now with Joe Biden is despite the fact actually he's not offering sweeping systemic change that the United States needs, the right will just end up demonizing him as a communist because they call anyone to the left of Genghis Khan a communist. So it doesn't matter what he does, they'll do that. And then some might feel, well, we've got to push back on this, so we shouldn't rock the boat too much. And our job is just to fight off Republican and right-wing attacks rather than say, have some backbone and you should fight for progressive ideas. What's your take on what should happen?
Yeah, I mean, so my channel in particular, my entire brand is really pushing back on misinformation and bad faith talking points. And if that happens on the left, then so be it. That'll be what I focus on. The reality of the situation is that we see it on such a vastly disproportionate level on the right than on the left in this country. So, I risk personally, I risk focusing more on the right, even when a Democrat's in the White House, and I'm sure I'll get criticism for continuing to, oh, you hit so hard on Donald Trump when he was in the White House, but now when Joe Biden's in the White House, you're not going to focus so much on him. If it is in any ballpark the same as what we see from Donald Trump, then absolutely. I don't work for Joe Biden. I don't work for Democrats. I'm an independent, YouTuber. So my what's the word I'm looking for? My allegiance is to truth and to sound trite, the Constitution and the rule of law and all of the things I fight for every day. So if it happens on the left, then absolutely. But the fact of the matter is, there's no world in which the two parties are the same right now, and so I don't want to fall into the trap of saying oh well, we just have to both sides it for the sake of both sidesing it. You did it for the right, so you have to do it for the left. And what we have right now is a Republican Party that is basically attempting a coup, and then a Democratic Party who that might have whatever issues it might have. Maybe some people we clearly have people who are still accepting, PAC money from fossil fuel companies, and that's shitty and it needs to be called out. But to pretend that they're both the same or in the same universe just by virtue of creating this need for an arbitrary balance, both sides is a little bit misguided, I think. But I also know that there are other channels on the left that do focus more intra-party on the left, and that's great. And I think that we need people on every end of the political spectrum that on left of center YouTube and social media more broadly that do different things. And so while I'll call out misinformation, we have people who are calling out Democrats who need to be called out because of their misdoings or whatever it is. So I think that we're not a monolith on the left, and I don't think that we need to be.
I mean, do you think are we in danger, if I were going to stop prodding myself as well? Are we creating echo chambers on the left? Are we reaching people? What do you think?
Yeah, look, you're going to be preaching generally to a similar choir that what we should aim to do, which is the same thing in our presidential elections here, in any of our elections here, is reach those people on the margins. And so, I've personally had a number of people reach out to me prior to this latest election, the latest general election, and say, I was having trouble figuring out what was true and what wasn't, and watching your videos helped me. And I got, a couple dozen of those maybe out of the millions of people that I reached every day. And those few messages meant a lot because, elections are won on the margins. And I'm sure that you see how close it is in the United States and in our elections. We're the difference in a Joe Biden and Donald Trump presidency is tens of thousands of votes in just a few states. And in 2016, it was even closer. So yeah, you're generally going to reach the same audience. Everybody has their favorite personalities that they watch anywhere, on TV, on YouTube, wherever it is. But if you can, reach other people because, maybe they appreciate the fact that you're telling the truth, or enjoy, or think it's funny or an entertaining show or whatever it is, for whatever reason, and you can turn a few people, then ultimately that's what matters.
mean, with the right, just on misinformation, I mean, do you think I mean, in terms of defeating it, isn't the problem that they know it works? I mean, you often look at some of the stuff, and it's the same in this country as well, of course. I mean, I suppose the difference in this country is most of our newspapers are very partisan
Mhm.
from a very right wing perspective. So they often act as basically the propaganda arms of the Conservative Party, and most newspapers in this country editorially support the Conservatives. And your country, I suppose, most main newspapers are kind of centrist, but then
Yeah.
you have Fox News and you have that kind of. We have broadcasting rules that don't allow that, but at the same time, we have huge problems with our broadcasters, including the much sainted BBC, in terms of how much they push government lines. But
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the factory of right wing misinformation in the United States, it just seems like it just gets worse and worse. And what Trump has done is just pushed the boundaries to a whole different level. And it was bizarre because by the end of it with Trump, it got to the stage where with the sort of stuff he'd tweet or say or do, in normal times, you'd be like, I cannot believe this is happening. But it
Right.
became so normal. It became just, it was part of the, of course, Donald Trump tweeted that, it just became,
Yeah.
that's the world we now live in. I
The
mean,
Overton window just shifted so far to the right that it fell off the cliff.
exactly. So, I mean, do you think that's the issue now? The problem is you kind of, people like you trying to push back, but actually, that approach in terms of misinformation has been so devastatingly successful. They know it works to a large degree. Caveat, he didn't win the election, obviously, but it is here to stay. That is now, the Republican Party, what they did for years is they had this more right-wing fringe who they cultivated until they took over the Republicans, and now they have. What do you think? I mean, is that's just the furniture of the political right in America?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken a lot about this to people that I've interviewed, and how do you, after 4 years of Fox News, we now have other networks that are popping up, like One America News, OAN, Newsmax, that only came into being because Fox News wasn't even conspiratorial enough. So, the unfortunate truth, and those networks, by the way, have even less adherence to facts and reality, and they're happy to push any conspiracy theory that pops up in any comment section in Facebook that they can find. So, somebody heard from somebody's, brother-in-law's hairdresser that George Soros was paying Hillary Clinton to work alongside Hugo Chavez to rig the election. Then, okay, then it ends up on national television in the United States, and that's just wild. And so, yeah, I mean, this is something that I've had to grapple with. Like, how do you come back from this? And I think the only answer here is because that approach is successful, because demagoguery is successful, because conspiracy theories are successful, because people are so desperate and they're looking for some excuse to explain away, whatever they want their reality to be. I think that our only approach has to be that we have to just hunker down and fight. And, that's why I put out videos every single day. And I repeat myself a lot, because clearly what people don't realize, or what people are only now starting to realize, is that repetition actually works. There's a reason that Donald Trump came out every single day during the impeachment trial and said that he was completely and totally exonerated, completely and totally exonerated, completely and totally exonerated. People start to repeat it. And now he's doing it again with the election being rigged, the election being rigged, the election being rigged, even though in reality it wasn't rigged. There's no evidence that anything was rigged, but just by virtue of repeating it, people start to believe it. So, I think the only thing we can do is just be ready for this fight. And that's why I welcome anyone on the left who wants to come on to YouTube and come on to Facebook and come on to any platform that you're on, and just, be willing to fight for both progressive values and just outright honesty, So I'm my audience isn't going to be exactly the same as anybody else's audience on the left. We're not going to do the same things. And like I said, that's okay, because ultimately just having those, left of center voices out there combating disinformation and fighting for the agenda that the vast majority of Americans actually want is ultimately going to be helpful to our cause.
I mean, what lessons would you, from your own very successful YouTube channel, would you give to other people on the left in terms of what made it work as a means to cultivate a left media ecosystem online? What are the kind of main things you would say, this is what works and this is how the left can actually start having a much more successful presence in these battlegrounds that the right have dominated for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, I would say first off, make it entertaining and have a voice that is going to um, you know kind of resonate with people. And second is just to kind of be impeccable with your word. I've worked really hard to make sure that people trust me, and I always back up everything I say. If I'm going to cite facts or statistics, I'll use a screenshot of my source right there on the screen, so that you don't just have to take my word for it. So I'm not just saying, oh, well, 1.2 million people voted, and take my word for it. Like, you don't know who I am. So I spent the last few years making sure that every fact, every statistic, everything I said, it was completely rooted, based in reality. And so I think that's, especially in today's ecosystem, that's the most important thing, because we just have a right wing media ecosystem that's run rampant with anything that pops into their head, they can just publish online. So
final couple of questions just on where you think things are heading politically. In terms of the Republicans, Trumpism, is Trumpism, do you think, an aberration, the Trump phenomenon? It was this bizarre aberration. What the hell happened there? And the Republicans will remain a very right-wing party, but maybe they'll, in the aftermath of his defeat, shift away from that. Or is Trumpism now the mainstream of the Republican Party? It's taken over the GOP. And if so, isn't the danger that next time round, someone who is more dangerous than Donald Trump, more effective at what he does, who learns from the mistakes of Donald Trump, comes along and basically shuts down the American Republic as we know it?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. I think all Donald Trump has done. Will there be another Donald Trump? Probably not. Just somebody who can have criticism and whatever bounce off him on a daily basis. I don't think we'll have that, because we see it now where there's politicians who, if they sneeze the wrong way, all of a sudden it's back on front page news again. So I think Donald Trump's ability to deflect criticism and whatever is a one-time thing. But I think what the Republican Party what he's done is basically lifted this veil that the Republican Party has had over themselves, where they've pretended to be fighters for the Constitution and the rule of law and the founding fathers and conservative values and small government and the working class, when in reality, none of that was true. These were all just empty platitudes that they've been spouting for years. And when push came to shove, when it came time to actually defend those values, to defend the Constitution, to defend working people, to defend states' rights, to defend small government, they didn't do any of that. So like, this was their chance to defend themselves on any of those values that they've been propping up and that they've been hiding behind for years. And so all that's shown is that the Republican Party is full of shit. And so yeah, I mean, Donald Trump is so ham-handed with everything he does, and he's so sloppy and that clearly everything, his extortion scheme, he had other people on the phone, and that goes for everything else he does. But yeah, next time, if you have someone who's not so ham-handed, who's not so sloppy, who's just a little bit smarter than him, then yeah, they'll get away with it. Like, I don't think anybody doubts that a major issue right now that we're facing is that, like, while this election theft didn't work this time because Trump lost to Biden by something like 14 times the margin. I think it was in Michigan that he beat Hillary Clinton by in 2016. Well, if it was closer, I mean, if it was the same margin that he beat Hillary Clinton by, that Joe Biden beat Donald Trump, that Hillary Clinton beat, I'm sorry, I screwed that up. If it was the same margin, like in Michigan, for example, I think it was 10,000 votes. If Joe Biden had beat Trump by only 10,000 votes in Michigan, there's no doubt that if you have some of these Republican-led states, in their state legislatures, that he could have stolen it, and that they can steal it next time. They've already sown the seeds of distrust in our electoral systems, and so like that part's done. And so so there's no doubt that they're just setting the stage to be able to do it more effectively next time when you have someone who's not so ham-handed as Donald Trump.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is the Democrats. There is a struggle for the heart and soul of the Democrats, and Bernie Sanders' campaign back in 2016 really mobilized and energized particularly younger progressive Americans who, frankly, wanted the Democrats to be a lot more, to offer a far more inspiring alternative that actually dealt with very entrenched systemic injustices in the United States. And then, of course, we've seen the rise of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the squad of progressive Congress people who've now, their ranks have been filled again. They've increased their number. So how much of a role do you think that new American left is going to play in the next few years? And how do you think that battle for the soul of the Democrats is going to pan out?
Yeah, I think, I hope that they have a major role on the left. I hope that they keep pushing for universal health care. I hope they keep pushing for robust, bold climate change. I hope that everybody, that they keep pushing for a livable wage. And I know it's going to be progressives that do this. I hope they keep pushing for making sure that there's no PAC money accepted, or there's no help for special interests or anything. I hope that the left continues to push. I think that this election in particular, that Joe Biden probably was the right person to run in this election, because look at the states that we had to win and that Democrats did win. You have the Rust Belt. You're looking at states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. If our sole focus rather was just to get Donald Trump out of the White House and to kind of stop this fascistic leader in his tracks, you needed somebody like Joe Biden. But with that said, I think that these progressive ideals are actually vastly popular among the American people, and so having Joe Biden in the White House will hopefully be a good transition into, showing that when some of this progressive legislation passes, that it's not as scary as the right makes it out to be, that we're not going to devolve into communist tyrannical government takeover just because more people have healthcare, that these are actually popular things, and that can hopefully pave the path for more progressive people to continue getting elected in Congress and the Senate and eventually in the presidency.
Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure in these tumultuous times, taking a bit of time out to impart your wisdom in the struggle for who comes about on top on YouTubedom. So let's hope that progressives gain some more ground. And
thanks to you too. You're doing exactly what I said, which is that we need progressives. We need those on the left to continue fighting and to kind of reclaim some of this space that's been completely taken over by the right. And so, there's clearly an audience there. I hope that my videos my videos can serve as a little bit of a proof of concept that there is a hungry audience on the left that doesn't want to hear misinformation, that doesn't want to just consume Rupert Murdoch's bullshit on a minute by minute basis. And so, I think what you're doing is just as important. So I would thank you for starting this, and I hope more people kind of follow your lead.
Amen, brother. Well, thank you so much, and Happy New Year.
Thanks, Owen. Happy New Year.
Please support this channel for independent thought, discussion of the most important issues that we face.